Stacy, being a stay-at-home mom is a full-time job. I'll handle the finances. You take care of the house. Kevin's voice boomed across the kitchen. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, casting an illusion of warmth and peace over the tension-filled room. I nodded, feeling the familiar weight of his words settle onto my shoulders. Sure, Kevin. Our suburban home in Minneapolis, nestled in a quiet cul-de-sac, seemed to embody the perfect American dream. To outsiders, our lives looked beautifully simple. But to me, every corner of this house was a silent witness to my struggle. Days blended into a routine of chores and cooking. Kevin came home every evening and asked if dinner was ready. One Monday morning, I felt unusually fatigued. The room swayed a little as I stood up, prompting me to make an appointment with Dr. Harris. A couple of days later, I sat in his cold, sterile office. Stacy, Dr. Harris began with a smile. Congratulations, you're pregnant. My heart leaped. Finally, a piece of happiness was growing inside me. I rushed home to tell Kevin. He was in the living room, absorbed in his laptop. Kevin, I started, my excitement barely contained. We're going to have a baby. Kevin looked up, his gaze penetrating through me. So you're not actually sick? Just being dramatic? It's morning sickness, Kevin. It's supposed to be hard. I willed him to understand, but his eyes remained cold. Well, that doesn't mean you can slack off. Dinner still needs to be made. Get it done, Stacy. The next few weeks were tough. I could hardly keep food down, but Kevin's demands stayed constant. One morning, sitting down with a dizzy spell, Kevin walked in. You're just using pregnancy as an excuse to slack off. Do your job, Stacy, he said, pouring himself coffee. I'm doing my best. Can't you see how much I'm suffering? My voice cracked, despite my efforts to stay strong. Kevin just shrugged and left for work, his footsteps echoing my isolation. With each passing day, I felt more trapped. The man I once thought was strong and protective had become my jailer. This wasn't the life I wanted for our child. But I was determined. The sacrifice and endurance of carrying life within me gave me new strength, even in the face of Kevin's coldness. Kevin's criticism didn't slow down. With every passing day, the pressure to maintain the house within his rigid standards grew heavier. My mornings now began with relentless nausea, but Kevin never seemed to notice. One evening, exhausted and aching, I struggled to make dinner. Kevin's footsteps on the hardwood floor echoed through the kitchen. This again? He eyed the simple meal I'd prepared. You could at least try, Stacy. I clenched my jaw, fighting back tears. I'm trying, Kevin. It's tough dealing with morning sickness and all the chores. You could have fooled me. He sat down at the table, his eyes cold and unfeeling. Pregnancy is not an excuse to slack off. You signed up for this, remember? I served him a plate in silence, feeling the delicate balance of my world tip further into chaos. My health was deteriorating, every part of me hurt, and the constant nausea left me weak. Kevin's demands, however, only increased. One particularly bad morning, as I was cleaning the bathroom, I felt dizzy and had to sit down. Kevin found me sitting on the floor, mop in hand. Unbelievable, he scoffed. Just when I thought you couldn't get lazier. I'm not lazy, I said, my voice shaky. I'm pregnant, Kevin. I need rest. Don't give me that crap, he shot back. You're using this pregnancy as an excuse. Do your job. Each biting comment dug under my skin, but I rose and grabbed the mop, needing to avoid another fight. Kevin's true nature was becoming clearer each day. The man I married was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. I knew I had to accept the harsh truth of my situation. That weekend, Carly called. I decided to take her up on her offer to come over for a bit. I'm worried about you, she said, concern evident in her voice. You sound exhausted. I am, I admitted, but I don't know what to do. Listen to your body, Stacy. You shouldn't be pushing yourself so hard. Her words were soft, yet firm. For a moment, I considered telling her everything but held back. I wasn't ready to open that door just yet. That evening, Kevin came home later than usual. He looked tired, and there was an angry edge to his posture. The house is a mess, he snapped the moment he walked in. I've been sick all day, I explained weakly. I couldn't manage much. You're always sick, aren't you? He sneered. If you can't handle the housework, how are you going to handle a baby? I felt a surge of anger. I'll manage, Kevin. How about some support? His eyes darkened. Support? From me. You're the one failing here, Stacy. I stared at him, the weight of his words crashing over me. The illusion of our perfect marriage was shattered. The man speaking to me now was not the Kevin I once knew. Maybe he never was. With each cruel remark, he pushed me further into a corner. But I wasn't defeated. I had our child to think about, and Kevin's facade was slipping. I turned away from him, clenching my fists to keep from trembling. One thing was clear. This wasn't over. And for the sake of my child, I would find the strength to fight back. Every morning felt like a battle. The nausea, the fatigue, it was like wrestling an invisible enemy. Kevin's anger grew more toxic with every passing day. I tried to keep up, but nothing was ever good enough. "You didn't vacuum," Kevin snapped one afternoon, standing in the living room with crossed arms. The vacuum cleaner loomed in the corner, barely out of my reach from where I sat on the couch, trying to catch my breath. "I was just about to," I replied, trying to stand. Kevin's face twisted in disdain. "Stacy, if you can't handle simple chores, maybe you shouldn't have this baby." His words were like a slap in the face. "How can you even say that? You're talking about our child." My voice wavered as anger and disbelief surged through me. "Well, if you can't manage a vacuum, what makes you think you can manage a kid?" His sarcasm was cutting. I felt my resolve harden. "I'll figure it out. I've been doing everything here, haven't I?" Kevin rolled his eyes and muttered something under his breath as he stomped out of the room. The door to his home office slammed shut behind him. Heart pounding, I forced myself to stand. Each step toward the vacuum felt like climbing a mountain. But I needed to do this. My child needed me. I pushed the vacuum around the living room, each pass over the floor, feeling like a victory against Kevin's cruelty. That evening, I called Carly. She picked up on the first ring. "Hey, Stace, how are you doing?" "I'm struggling, Carly," I said, my voice breaking. "Kevin suggested I shouldn't have this baby. Can you believe that?" Her shock was palpable through the phone. "He what? Stacy, you can't stay there. It's not safe for you or the baby." "What can I do, Carly? I feel trapped." "You need to leave him," she urged. "Come stay with me. We'll figure it out together." I hesitated, biting my lip. I need to think about it." "You've thought about this long enough, Stacy. Just come, tonight." Kevin's voice boomed from the hallway, cutting our conversation short. "Why are you always on the phone? Dinner's not going to make itself, you know." "I have to go," I whispered to Carly before hanging up. I braced myself and entered the kitchen. Kevin was already seated at the table, tapping his fingers impatiently. I moved around, trying to muster the energy to prepare the meal. The tension in the air was suffocating. "Stacy, this attitude of yours is getting old," Kevin said, breaking the silence. "Are you even listening to me?" "Yes, Kevin, I hear you," I said, forcing calm into my voice as I chopped vegetables. "You need to stop acting like a martyr," he continued, his tone dripping with disdain. "You're not the only pregnant woman in the world, you know." I bit back a retort, focusing on the task before me. As I cooked, I knew Carly was right. This wasn't just my fight anymore. I had another life to protect, and staying here wasn't an option. Once dinner was made and Kevin was distracted with his meal, I slipped away to our bedroom. I began packing a small bag, my hands trembling but determined. I couldn't let Kevin's cruelty dictate the life my child would have. The sounds of Kevin's grumbling from the kitchen drifted in, pushing me to move faster. As I zipped my bag, the common chants of Kevin's voice echoed from downstairs. This was it. This was my moment to escape, to protect my child. And with Carly's help, I knew I could do it. As the early morning light filtered through the curtains, I quietly grabbed my packed bag and tiptoed down the stairs. Kevin was still asleep, giving me the perfect opportunity to leave without confrontation. I dialed Carly's number, my heart pounding. "I'm ready," I whispered when she picked up. "I'm on my way, just hang tight," she replied, her voice steady and reassuring. Minutes felt like hours as I waited by the door, clutching my bag. The sound of Carly's car pulling up was a lifeline. I slipped out and into the passenger seat, feeling a wave of relief wash over me. "You did it," Carly said, giving my hand a comforting squeeze as we pulled away from the house. "You're safe now, Stacy. We'll get through this together." We drove in silence, but it was a comforting silence, filled with the unspoken promise of support and safety. When we arrived at Carly's place, she helped me inside and showed me to the guest room. The weight of Kevin's control started to lift as I settled in. Later that day, as I sat on the couch, Carly handed me a cup of tea. We need to talk about next steps, she said gently. We can't let Kevin get away with this. I know, I replied, feeling the resolve strengthen within me, but he won't let go easily. The next few days were tense. Kevin's texts and calls flooded my phone, his messages growing more aggressive. Where the hell are you? Come home now, one read. Another said, You'll regret this, Stacy. I ignored them, my focus on the baby and the new life I was beginning to build. Carly's presence was a constant source of strength. She kept reminding me, You're doing the right thing. One evening, Kevin's number flashed on my phone. Against my better judgment, I answered it. Stacy, where are you? His voice was edged with anger. I've left, Kevin. I'm done living under your control, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. If you leave, don't expect to come back, he shouted. I'm not coming back, I replied firmly, then hung up. The next day, Carly and I met with a lawyer. His eyes were kind but serious as he listened to my story. We need to file for legal separation and full custody, he advised. We'll also address the harassment and threats. It was daunting, but with Carly and the lawyer by my side, I felt a glimmer of hope. This was just the beginning. That evening, as I sat with Carly, my phone buzzed again. Another text from Kevin. You think you can take my child away from me? Think again. Block his number, Carly suggested. You don't need that stress. I nodded and did as she suggested, feeling a small victory in that simple act. I was reclaiming my life, step by step. But the battle was far from over. I knew Kevin wouldn't back down easily, and the road ahead would be tough. Yet looking at Carly, I knew I wasn't alone. With her support and my determination, I could face whatever was coming next. You made the right choice, Stacy, Carly said, smiling at me. You're stronger than you think. I hope so, I replied, feeling a newfound resolve solidify within me. And with that, I found the strength to continue. Each day was a step away from the darkness that Kevin had tried to trap me in. My journey was just beginning, but for the first time, I felt the future was mine to shape. Days turned into a whirlwind of legal meetings and emotional support from Carly. The distant threat of Kevin simmered in the background, his aggression muted but ever present. We were sitting at the kitchen table one morning when Carly's doorbell rang, sending a chill down my spine. Carly glanced at me and squeezed my hand before getting up to answer the door. Muffled voices rose from the hallway before she returned, her face pale. It's Kevin and his mother, Beth. My heart pounded in my chest. Beth had always been supportive, or so I thought. Now I wasn't so sure. Stacy, we need to talk. Kevin's voice rang out as he entered the room, Beth trailing behind with a stern expression. There's nothing to discuss, Kevin, I said, standing my ground. I've made my decision. Decision? Beth's eyes narrowed. Leaving him while pregnant? Do you even understand what you're doing? I took a deep breath, my resolve firm. I do, Beth. Kevin has been abusive and controlling. He even suggested I abort our baby just because I couldn't keep up with the housework. Beth's face contorted with disbelief. She turned to Kevin. Is this true, Kevin? Did you say that? Kevin's eyes flickered with annoyance. She's twisting my words. Stacy's not capable of managing on her own. That's not what I heard, Carly interjected, stepping closer to me. I've seen the texts, heard the voicemails. Stacy isn't lying. Beth's sternness wavered, giving way to confusion. Kevin, this isn't how I raised you. How could you? Kevin's facade slipped. Mom, you don't understand. I was handling everything. Stacy she wasn't pulling her weight. That's not an excuse for what you said, Kevin. Beth shot back, her voice quivering. You're talking about your own child. Kevin's anger flared. She's blowing this out of proportion. You're all turning on me because she's playing the victim. She isn't playing anything, Carly said, glancing at Beth. This is real, and Stacy needs protection from him. I felt a surge of gratitude for Carly and courageously added, Kevin, this isn't just about us anymore. I have to think about our child, and you are not the man you claim to be. Beth turned to me, a pained expression on her face. Stacy, I had no idea it was this bad. I'm so sorry. I appreciate that, Beth, I said softly, but apologies won't change what Kevin has done. Kevin's eyes burned with anger and desperation. You think you can just take my child away and erase me from your life? I met his gaze, unwavering. I'm not erasing you, Kevin. You made the choice to become this person. Now I'm making the choice to protect myself and our baby. Beth's eyes filled with tears as she turned to Kevin. I can't support you in this, Kevin. I see now that Stacy needs to be away from you. You need help. Beth, you can't be serious, Kevin stuttered, taken aback. Goodbye, Kevin, I said firmly. Take your time to understand what you've done, but don't contact me again. We'll let the lawyers handle everything from here. Kevin stood there, shock and fury battling for control on his face. Then, without another word, he turned and stormed out, leaving Beth standing there, defeated. Thank you, Beth, I said gently as she nodded and followed Kevin out. Once they were gone, I collapsed into Carly's arms, a mix of relief and exhaustion washing over me. You did it, Stacy, Carly whispered. You stood up to him. And I'll keep standing, I replied, feeling a renewed strength, for my baby and for myself. The morning after Kevin's confrontation with Beth, I felt an unfamiliar sense of calm. The house was quiet, and for the first time in weeks, I felt safe. I knew this was far from over, but facing Kevin and his mother had given me newfound courage. Carly sat across from me at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee. Beth's reaction shook him. You could see it in his eyes, she said, breaking the silence. I nodded. It's the first time anyone stood up to him, aside from me. The doorbell rang, startling us both. Carly went to answer it, glancing back at me nervously. She returned with our lawyer. Good morning, he greeted, taking a seat. We have a strong case for full custody and child support, but I need to know if you're ready for what's about to unfold. I took a deep breath. I'm ready. I need to protect my child. Kevin's downfall began the moment the papers were served. Beth's support for me had become public, turning the community's opinion against him. He started missing work, his professional reputation taking a hit. One afternoon, Kevin showed up at Carly's house, banging on the door. Carly peered through the window and frowned. It's him. Stay here, she instructed, stepping outside to confront him. I watched from the window, anxiety twisting in my chest. Get lost, Kevin. Stacy doesn't want to see you, Carly said firmly. He pushed past her, storming into the house. Stacy, this is insane. You're tearing my life apart. I stood, bracing myself. You did that to yourself, Kevin. You need to leave. His eyes flashed with desperation. Please, Stacy, let's talk. We can fix this. Carly stepped between us. Kevin, you've done enough damage. Get out. Kevin's face twisted with rage. You think you can replace me, Carly? You're filling her head with lies. I held up a hand, trying to stay calm. Kevin, leave now, or I'll call the police. He took a step toward me, his eyes dark and menacing. You think you're so brave, Stacy? This isn't over. Get out, Carly shouted, shoving him toward the door. We're done here. Kevin stumbled back, glaring at both of us before storming out. I collapsed onto the couch, shaking. Thank you, Carly. I couldn't have faced him alone. Carly sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. You're stronger than you know, Stacy. The confrontation with Kevin had left me rattled, but the battle lines were now clearly drawn. His desperate behavior only strengthened our case against him. That evening, our lawyer called with an update. Kevin's losing support rapidly. His erratic behavior and Beth's public disapproval have turned people against him. It's going in our favor. I felt a spark of hope. Thank you. As the weeks passed, Kevin's life continued to unravel. Beth's disownment had left him isolated, and his attempts to reach me grew increasingly frantic. I blocked his number, focusing on my baby and the future I was carving out. Beth called one evening, her voice heavy with sorrow. Stacy, I want you to know that I'm here for you. Kevin is my son, but the person he's become, I can't support him. Thank you, Beth, I said, tears stinging my eyes. Your support means the world to me. You're doing the right thing, she said softly. Stay strong. The climax of Kevin's downfall came when our lawyer informed us that we had a strong case for full custody and child support. Kevin's once formidable control had crumbled entirely. You've brought disgrace upon this family. You're no longer my son. Beth's words cut through Kevin's last line of defense, leaving him utterly alone and broken. Mom, you can't mean that. Kevin's voice cracked, the reality sinking in, but Beth's resolve was firm. I do, and until you seek help, you're not welcome back. Kevin's empire of control had fallen. I felt an overwhelming sense of liberation as I prepared to take the final steps toward a new beginning. Carly and I sat on the porch that evening, watching the sunset. We did it, Stacy, Carly said, smiling. You're free. I nodded, feeling the weight lift. And now I can finally start anew. For me and my baby. The legal proceedings moved forward swiftly. With each step, I felt a little closer to freedom. Carly and I sat in the lawyer's office discussing our final strategy. "We have a strong case," the lawyer assured us. "Kevin's history of emotional abuse and recent erratic behavior work in our favor. Full custody and child support are almost certain." I nodded, feeling a sense of relief. "Thank you for everything." As we left the office, my phone buzzed with another text from Kevin. I didn't need to read it to know it would be filled with desperation and threats. I blocked his number, determined not to let his words affect me. At Carly's house, I began to focus on rebuilding my life. I decorated the guest room, preparing it for my baby. Carly helped me pick out pastel colors, and we filled the room with love and care. One evening, while we were arranging baby clothes, Carly looked over at me. "You're doing amazing, Stacy. I'm so proud of you." "Thanks, Carly. I couldn't have done it without you." Our peace was occasionally interrupted by unwanted messages from Kevin's friends and family, but Carly's unwavering support kept me grounded. One day, as I was leaving the grocery store, I saw Kevin across the parking lot. He looked disheveled, his once confident demeanor shattered. He approached me, his face a mixture of anger and desperation. "Stacy, please, I need to talk to you," he pleaded. I stood my ground. "There's nothing left to say, Kevin. We're finished." He reached out, his hand trembling. "I'm begging you, Stacy. Don't shut me out." I stepped back, shaking my head. "This isn't about you anymore. It's about what's best for our child, and me. You need help, Kevin." His eyes filled with fury. "You'll regret this." Carly arrived to pick me up, her presence a shield against Kevin's hostility. She stepped between us, her voice firm. "Leave her alone, Kevin. You're only making things worse." Kevin's shoulders slumped, and for the first time I saw a hint of defeat in his eyes. He turned and walked away, that as further solidifying that our paths had truly diverged. Back at Carly's house, I felt a sense of closure. I spent the next few weeks focusing on my health and preparing for my child's arrival. The community's support and Carly's unwavering care became my anchors. The final court date arrived, and Carly stood by my side as the judge reviewed our case. "It is clear that Mr. Anderson's behavior is not conducive to a healthy environment for the child. Full custody is granted to Mrs. Anderson. Child support will be mandated." Tears of relief streamed down my face as the gavel came down, solidifying my freedom. Carly hugged me tight, and the weight of the past months finally lifted. Outside the courthouse, I received a message from my lawyer. Kevin had tried to appeal the decision, but was denied. His desperation had turned into a string of apologetic and pleading texts, which I chose to ignore. Carly and I walked to the car, the sun shining brightly overhead. "How do you feel?" she asked, her hand in mine. "Free," I replied, feeling the future open up before me. I spent the next few days planning for the baby's arrival, focusing on the positive changes ahead. Kevin's attempts at reconciliation continued, but I remained resolute. Each ignored message was a step toward reclaiming my strength. When I visited the nursery we'd prepared, I stood by the crib, running my hand along the smooth wood. Carly joined me, her smile warm. "This baby is going to have the best mom." "Thanks to you, Carly," I said, feeling a wave of gratitude. As I prepared for my child's birth, I knew that I had overcome the worst. My focus shifted from the past to the hopeful future, ready to embrace the new dawn with my baby. For the first time, I felt truly empowered, ready to protect and love the life growing inside me. And that night, as I lay in bed, the weight of Kevin's control finally lifted, leaving behind the strength of my own resilience. The future was mine to shape, and I was determined to fill it with love and hope for my child. The days leading up to my baby's birth blended into a mix of appointments and final preparations. Carly was a constant presence, her calm reassurance grounding me. We were folding baby clothes in the nursery when her phone buzzed. She frowned and showed me the screen. It was a news article about Kevin. "Kevin's in serious trouble at work," Carly said, her voice low. "Seems people are finally seeing his true colors." A part of me felt a twinge of vindication, but I quickly brushed it away, focusing on the task at hand. "It's not our problem anymore," I said, determined to keep my focus on the future. My water broke one morning as I was sipping tea with Carly on the porch. Panic flickered in her eyes, but she quickly composed herself. "All right, time to go," she said, grabbing the hospital bag we'd packed weeks earlier. She guided me to the car, her calm presence a balm against the rising tide of anxiety. At the hospital, the hours blurred into a haze of pain and determination. Carly held my hand through each contraction, her support unwavering. Finally, with one last push, my baby's first cry filled the room, bringing tears of joy and relief. "It's a girl," the doctor announced, placing the tiny bundle in my arms. I looked down at her, overwhelmed by love and protectiveness. "We did it," Carly whispered, tears streaming down her face. The next few days were a whirlwind of diaper changes, feedings, and little sleep. Carly was my rock, guiding me through the early days of motherhood. My baby's presence was a beacon of hope, illuminating the dark chapters of my past. One evening, as Carly and I sat on the porch, my baby asleep in my arms, we reflected on the journey we'd been through. "You're starting a new chapter, Stacy," Carly said, her voice filled with pride. "You and your daughter are going to have a beautiful life." "I couldn't have done it without you, Carly," I replied, squeezing her hand. "You've been my strength through all of this." As the days turned into weeks, I found a new rhythm. The community's support, once a source of curiosity, became a network of genuine care. People stopped by with meals and gifts, their gestures small but significant. One afternoon, Beth visited. She looked older, the weight of her son's actions clearly taking a toll on her. "Stacy, I wanted to see how you're doing," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "We're doing well, Beth. Thank you for your support," I responded, my tone sincere. "I'm so sorry for everything. Kevin's getting help." Her eyes pleaded for understanding. "I hope he finds the help he needs for everyone's sake," I said, holding my daughter close. Beth nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. "You're a strong woman, Stacy. Your daughter is lucky to have you." After she left, I sat with Carly, processing the visit. "Do you think he'll change?" I asked, not expecting a definitive answer. "People can change, but it takes a lot of effort and willingness. For now, focus on you and your baby," Carly advised, her words like a comforting blanket. The future stretched out before me, filled with both uncertainty and promise. Kevin's shadow lingered, but it no longer defined me. My daughter's presence was a constant reminder of the strength I'd found within myself. One evening, as Carly and I watched the sunset, she turned to me with a smile. "What's next for you, Stacy?" "Building a life filled with love and safety for my daughter," I replied, feeling a profound sense of purpose. "Creating a home where she'll always feel valued and protected." Carly nodded, her eyes reflecting pride and support. "You've got this, Stacy. You're one of the strongest people I know." As I held my daughter, I knew that even without a traditional family structure, she would grow up surrounded by love and resilience. Together, we were stepping into a new dawn, ready to face the future with hope and determination.